Everyone for joining here. I'm excited to be talking through these different points. Usually when I do this, it's in a small group setting or one-on-one. Right now, I feel like I'm just going to be talking at you for a while. Really, what I'm looking forward to are your questions. So feel free to put them in that chat box, and we'll get to them at the end there. So solar ROI, it's a big question on a lot of folks' minds right now, especially with the federal tax credit going away. So we'll do our agenda here. I'll intro a little bit about the company here, how solar works, generally speaking, not the physics behind it, but right, what are the important highlights for that, and specifically as well, Maine's net metering policy. Really, the policy varies widely state to state, and that has a huge impact on how solar saves you money, or if it saves you money even. So we'll look at the cost of an average system, important points to keep in mind when choosing a solar installer, and then the Q&A section at the end. So Maine Solar Solutions, we've been in business since 2012. We have over 45 folks on staff. Everyone's a full-time employee of the company. We have over 3,000 installations ranging from, grid tied, battery only, I think electrical projects maybe in there, off-grid projects, commercial. So, over the years, we've expanded quite broadly and have done a lot of work out there. Our install map is very impressive. If you're poking around on our website, make sure to check that out. You might, zoom in on the Google Maps, find your house. And I would bet if you're anywhere in kind of the southern half of the state, you probably have some neighbors nearby who have worked with us directly and might be able to talk about their experience with us. So, the big benefits or key benefits here of switching to solar, really, I think the idea is instead of waiting to see what your bill is each month from CMP, you're a little more proactive with that. You're investing in the equipment, you're making a one-time fixed investment. You pay the purchase price or you finance the cost of the system, and then you've got the equipment, right? Maybe it's on the roof, maybe it's on the ground mount, maybe it's on a garage, down the driveway, whatever it may be. You've got the equipment and it's generating electricity. So that upfront cost is not, you're not saving money in the first year. It can take 7, 10, 15 years, depending on the exact specs of the project, the work involved in the install, and then how much sun is on the roof, right? And how is everything oriented? So that's why there's such a wide range when we talk about ROI, even just within the projects that we do, right? Not considering all the other solar installers that are out there. A lot of variables go into it. So on top of the financial savings, right, you're reducing the carbon footprint and impact on the environment. And there's, absolutely some synergy between installing electric draws like heat pumps, electric vehicles, electric hot water heaters, especially the heat pump hot water heaters I would highlight, and then offsetting all of that usage with your power. And then if we add a battery to that system, batteries in Maine provide backup electricity. It's the same function as a generator. So the solar kind of sits at the center of this web and can offer a lot of benefits. So Maine's net metering policy, I like to use a sunny summer day as an example. It's not raining in Freeport, but it's definitely overcast. So on a day like today, our installs in this area are kind of petering along. They're doing a little bit on a cloudy day, but if we picture a nice sunny summer day, solar's super effective. It's making a lot of electricity. Well, if the system's designed to offset your home's total use throughout the year on that one sunny day, in that instant, the solar is making a lot more electricity than your house needs, right? So it's some of that power gets used by the lights, by the TV, by the microwave, whatever's turned on. You're using some of that electricity. All of that excess generation, that's going backwards out through your meter onto the grid. You get 100% credit for all the power that leaves your property. right? So then nighttime rolls around, you're pulling electricity in from the grid. but instead of paying for that electricity like you do now, you use the banked credits from the daytime. And that's the savings. That most basic level, that's the savings right there. The credits that you're accumulating on your bill on sunny days, those are kilowatt hour credits. So, it's offsetting the unit of power, kilowatt hour, and offsets whatever the cost is for that kilowatt hour, both the supply and delivery portions of the bill. So if you're looking at your CMP bill, the last page of the bill is in blue ink. That's a new thing CMP is doing, trying to highlight that's the supply, right? The actual electricity itself. And then the page before that is in black ink as the delivery. So both of those, delivery and supply, are both offset by these solar credits. So we really, as a solar installer in trying to offset your bill, when we design these systems, most of the conversations I have are around how do we fully offset your CMP bill? So we lean on this policy. So we over generate in the spring and the summer when the going's good, the days are long, the sun's really high in the sky, building up that bank of credits. And then in the wintertime, often the opposite happens. I'm thinking, especially a house with heat pumps, a lot more electric use for heating, and then the generation drops way down. So we're taking that bank of credits and kind of eating through it through the winter time. The solar can generate something in January, February. It's just not a lot of power those months. So really, we're leaning on the policy to make sure we're generating enough power and fully offsetting your bill throughout the year. There is a catch. The catch to this policy is that the credits you make in any month are only valid for the next 12 months. So if we're making a lot of credits in June, those credits are only good until next June, July to July, August to August, so on and so forth. So that effectively puts a ceiling on how much solar it makes sense to install. Generally, we look at, okay, what's your CMP bill, your Versant bill, whatever, wherever you are in the state, and tally up, okay, how much power did you use in the last 12 months or an average over the last 5 years, whatever data we decide to use, and then size the system to offset that amount of power. If we make too much power, say we make way, way, way more credits than you need in the summertime, there's a chance you end up with expiring credits, in which case you don't see the financial value from those. We'll circle back and kind of hit on those highlights again later. I know that was a really long-winded explanation, but I wanted to break that down because it's super important to how solar saves you money, right? Our whole point here. So rolling on here, common questions that come up. How do the credits save you money? You'd see a new page on your CMP bill, with a solar install. That's kind of an accounting of the credits, and you see each column. Okay, I used this many kilowatt hours from the grid. I sent out this many kilowatt hours to the grid. Here's my bank, right, in that next column. And then what's carrying forward to the next month. So that kilowatt hour credit is offsetting the full cost of that kilowatt hour. The only part of the bill that we can't offset with a solar array is the fixed connection fee. So if you're in CMP's territory, it's about $29 a month right now. That's your minimum bill. That's kind of right. That's zeroing out the bill is actually $29 a month. That's the only part we can't cover with the solar. Everything else we can offset. Right, I talked about how we're leaning on that net metering system. The question that's on the slide here, how and why are the credits factored into my system design? It's really all about the net metering credits in the policy, making sure that we build up those credits large enough in the spring and the summer to carry you through the winter time. And CMP is super above board with how they track and honor the credits. Like I mentioned, there's that whole page on the bill where you see the accounting, credits coming in, credits going out each month. As well, you can log into your app. You have your own source of data to see how much power your system made, what went out to the grid, what you used in the house, that you were generally able to install, a little extra sensors to see how much power is your house using, which is great when we can do that. So you've got, with your own solar array, you've got your own accounting of the data, and it lines up really well with CMP. I've never seen an instance where there was a question about that. The credits expire 12 months after they're created as a review. So, if we're making a lot of credits in June, they're good till next June, July to July, August to August. And you don't need to do anything to use the credits, no active management once the system's in place and the agreements have been signed. CMP treats those credits on a first in, first out basis. So it's the oldest credits always being spent first. So you don't have to try to apply a certain month's credits and worry about them expiring, right? They just go through it in a pretty straightforward manner. So when we're designing the system, there's a lot of factors to think about. I mentioned the first one here already. How much power does your house use? So usually the utility bill is a great baseline stat for that. Okay, historically, how much electricity have you used? And then we can also think about things that might be changing. Maybe you want to get a sauna or a hot tub in the backyard. That's going to be nice at some point here as it gets colder. But heat pumps, electric vehicles, there's a lot of things that can drive up electric use, and that's kind of the trend I've seen, especially here in this job, focusing a lot on what folks' electric bills look like. It's really common for electric use to increase over time as we have all these new, electrification that's happening. So we can look at your usage to help us design the system. Look at how much space is on your roof, how big is the roof, how do the panels fit up there, how steep is the roof. That changes the panel's productivity, changes their angle to the sun. Of course, the sun's moving throughout the year. Panels don't move. If they're on the roof, they're fixed in place. Azimuth, that I think of it as like solar south, not on a compass, that's magnetic south, but where's the south to the sun? 180 degrees azimuth is the best heading for an array, kind of maximizes the production throughout the year. Shading is a huge factor in Maine. There's a lot of trees out there. And even if you have the most perfect south-facing roof with just the right roof pitch and everything, you've got a huge tree there, it's not going to get any sun. So getting really, really accurate shade information is critical to sizing the system the right way. And then, what part of the state are you in? And obviously that will somewhat affect in Maine how much sun your house might get. But compare Maine and Arizona, or I don't know, someplace in Mexico, right? It's like all the geography really matters in how much sun your solar array would see. So a few commonly asked questions here. What is the best angle? I mentioned the roof pitch being a factor. In Maine, between 32 and 30 to 37 degrees on the roof pitch. If you're a roofer or familiar with how roofers talk about roof pitches, that's I think it's between 7 and 9/12, 7/12, 9/12, 8/12. Those are all really good pitches for the roof to be at. In that range, there's extremely limited difference in how much productivity the panels would see, assuming they're south facing. If the house faces more, the roof line, if the ridge is facing north south, so the roofs are facing east west, you actually want a much shallower pitch. And this is kind of intuitive when you start thinking about it. That shallower pitch, let's say we have an east facing roof facing the sunrise, obviously it gets really good sun in the morning. If it's a really shallow roof, it's going to hang on to that sun later in the day, in the afternoon. There's still a good angle between the sun and the roof. If you make that roof a 12/12 pitch or 45 degrees, really steep, it's going to do fine in the morning, but it's really going to drop off in the afternoon pretty drastically. So the optimal pitch does actually kind of change depending on how your house is situated. Best type of roofing, We commonly install on shingle roofs, on metal roofs. If we have enough space, like on a warehouse, we can look at rubber roofs too. I think the cleanest roof to install solar on is a standing seam metal roof, kind of that the metal roof that has some of those vertical ridges where the metal is kind of bent over itself. And that style of roof, you don't see the screws when you're standing at the ground looking up at the roof. If that's a standing seam roof, you can't see any of the fasteners on the roof. The reason we like that is because we can clamp right onto those vertical ridges where the metal's crimped over itself. That's a really secure attachment, and there's no penetrations through the roof. So honestly, it's a little easier for the crews to install on, and it avoids any risk at all of there being leaks. Another question about removing trees. Tree removal can make sense. Sometimes it doesn't. If you've got a lone tree shading your best roof, maybe it makes sense to think about taking it down. That tree might be helping to keep the house cooler in the summertime. So cutting that tree down, especially if the house doesn't have great insulation, maybe you're spending a lot more to cool the space in the summertime, and then maybe you're chasing your tail a little bit there. So it can make sense to look at that. Where I think it often doesn't make sense is if you have a really tall, really mature tree line, where it's not just one tree, like even the closest tree to the house isn't really going to make much of a difference, because you take out the closest tree, there's the next tree behind it, the next tree behind it that are the same height or even taller. So often in that kind of scenario, it doesn't make a ton of sense to think about cutting down trees. Do I have to install solar on my roof? No, absolutely not. You could do a ground mounted array if there's enough space in the yard and enough sun in the yard as well. I mentioned garage roofs earlier. You could, like a shade structure or a carport. That's the word I was looking for. If you got a carport, we can absolutely put solar on top of that. So certainly more options than just the roof. So the average Maine home, average is a funny word. So when I was, putting together these numbers, I was thinking of, okay, if you look up stats for the average family of 4 in Maine, a house that uses an oil or propane furnace, not heat pumps for heating, it's around 7,500 to 8,000 kilowatt hours per year. So I went to 650 kilowatt hours per month. I had a little typo on the slide there. That's monthly use. So just be 650 per month, not per year there on the first line. That translates to about $185 bill a month. And if we were to do that on a reasonably effective roof, not the ideal, not a perfectly south-facing roof with no shade, but kind of the average roof that we see, there's some shade, it's a little bit of off south. We'd look at 14 540 watt solar panels. Our install cost, start to finish, $23,601 for this configuration. And the payback period would be about 10 years, which is strong, right? There's a lot of value there. And we're expecting that value to increase. You might have seen in the news, I don't know, it might have been a month ago now, CMP released or put out a press bulletin about what they're looking for the Public Utilities Commission to approve a new 5-year plan, increasing the rates, electric rates, and it's a hefty increase compared to today's rate. Over that 5-year period, they're pursuing a 30% rate increase, which is huge, super, super expensive. It's not good. There's a lot of people out there who need to pay that electric bill, or on a fixed income. It's tough. It does make solar look better in that scenario because it's offsetting whatever the cost is for that power. Right? You can control that production there. And that's really the strength of it, right? You're making that fixed upfront investment, which is significant. It's a huge investment. Every project we work on is a big project, but in the long run, especially if you're going to live in the house for the next 10 years and beyond that, there's a lot of savings to be seen there. right? Because really what we're focused on right now with this 5-year plan, that's really just the short term. In the long run, these numbers are only going to get bigger over time. Right. So I've already been talking about this first point. Electricity is getting more expensive. That helps solar look better, and on the financial side, there's a lot of site specific details that impact the ROI, right? Because if you have a really, really shady house, if you have a huge stand of pine trees all around the house, the roof might not see any sun, in which case there might not be a return period, right? Just you have to have some decent sun on the panels to make sense. And then there's all the details of what equipment are we using, what panel type, what inverter manufacturer. So there's a lot of options in there. Are we doing batteries, right? The batteries, really nice to have, right? Very convenient, great source of backup power. They don't help the payback at all. They're just providing a service, backup electricity. So what equipment is used makes a big difference in the ROI as well. And then if you're, whether you're paying for it outright or financing it, interest will have a huge impact on the ROI as well. So some details that we recommend when you're looking into solar and trying to decide between different installers, here's some of the key points that we recommend folks look at. The electricians, preferably on site, who are doing the work. They should be licensed, they should be experienced. Solar is a pretty specific, pretty niche type of electrical work. A lot of systems are using DC electricity, DC off the roof. And that, every house uses AC power. So the solar world is kind of specific. It's not any electrician who can work on all solar equipment. So you want to know that they've done this solar work before. They're familiar with the equipment, familiar with how it works. And beyond the electricians, the rest of the team, who's there on site? Is it the company that you're paying for the system, or are they subcontracting out the work? Who's doing the work matters a lot, especially if you do need service, making sure that you can have someone come back out in the future. Warranties listed later on here. But yeah, you want to know who's doing the work there. Getting really accurate site data. I've mentioned shading and the orientation of the building. Getting really, really accurate data for that is critical. In terms of knowing how many panels fit, but also how productive they're going to be. Being able to give an accurate assessment on what are you going to get out of the system. For us, it costs us the same to put 14 panels on just about any shingle roof, right? Any residential shingle roof out there. But what the homeowner is getting in return for that varies really widely. So getting really good on-site data, not just relying on satellite imagery, which can be really good depending on where you live in the state, can be terrible. I've seen some really awful satellite data out there. So getting really good specific information matters. How the array is designed in tandem with that information, how you're using the data. I guess it's not just the information, but how it's being applied matters. Where the panels are going. Does it make sense? Does it need code? The warranty, which I mentioned before, is really important. And then, how long has the company been in business? How long have they operated in Maine? All good details to be looking into when you're thinking about a solar install. So with that, I think we've arrived at our questions portion here. Liz, have we had any questions pop up in the chat?
We have had a few. We had one question about whether we lease panels.
Yes, we do have, we had lease options. I guess I should be accurate. We had lease options. We intend to have lease options again. That's a really good question, which lets me segue into another topic. So I'm sure there's been a lot in the news about the big, beautiful bill that was passed over the summer. It eliminated the solar tax credit for residential installs as of the end of this year. So with that 30% federal tax credit no longer existing, a lot of the existing lease structures depended on that tax credit. So not necessarily the residential credit, but maybe the commercial credit, which has a longer tail on it. But there's a lot of upheaval. The fact that the tax credit and the rules around the tax credit are changing has a huge impact on how these financing companies, that's what it is. It's, it's banks, it's fintech startups that are offering these lease products. Their math on their end changes drastically when rules get tweaked. So the last couple months has been a scramble for that type of entity, trying to figure out, okay, these are the new rules for the commercial solar tax credit, which it has a longer tail on it than the residential tax credit. And how can we meet these changing rules in a way that we can, still make sense for their business? So right now we don't have a lease option today. We anticipate having lease options in the near future, in the coming weeks. It's kind of the line I've been getting for 2.5, 3 months now is, 2 weeks. 2 more weeks. 4 more weeks. So as soon as we have firm numbers from a company that we trust, we'll absolutely be offering leases again. I know I have a list of names of folks that I'm going to be getting back to once we have that option. So thank you. Yeah, the leasing is important. We want it, something we want to offer in conjunction with loans and typical direct purchases. So thank you. Great question.
That dovetails beautifully into our next question. Do I have to pay in cash?
No. Talk to your bank or credit union, see if they have what loans they offer. Look into HELOCs, home equity line of credit. That might make a lot of sense, even in today's interest environment. That might look better. We are partnered with a credit union called Credit Human, and they have a solar specific loan product, and we have a relationship with them. So you can, if you work with them, you can do $0 down on the project, and then payments start effectively after the system's installed and running. Usually it's a month or two after that, really. So a lot of options out there. And I think interest rates are higher than they were. But I think even once you factor that in, if you've got a good site for solar and you finance the project, you can still come out ahead in the long run. It really comes down to those site specific details, just how good is the roof, and what are the loan options that are out there. For reference, I'll just throw it out there. The Credit Human, our partner, they're at a fixed 7.99% interest rate, 8%. So if you can find something through your bank or credit union that's better, or the HELOC might look better, absolutely. Certainly more options than direct purchase, certainly.
Great. 2 more questions so far. How far are we booking out?
We're looking out to the end of January or February, somewhere in that range right now. And we add projects that list when we have a signed contract and a deposit or a loan on the project.
We did have one more question. We saw a 10-year average ROI. We had a request to hear the length of the warranty again.
Warranty. So let's start with Maine Solar's warranty. We give 2 parts. First part is a 5-year workmanship warranty covering everything, all the work we do on site, everything we interface with. That's the first part of the warranty. Second part of the warranty is 30 years, which is exciting, but it's only on specific components. It's on the panels, the inverters or optimizers, and focusing on that equipment. Sorry, I got tripped up there because I was thinking about different inverter manufacturers. So panels, inverters or microinverters, optimizers, or like a central string inverter. So anything that is a panel or inverter related equipment, we give a 30-year warranty on. So if it's defective, like not if somebody's out in the backyard practicing baseball, hits a foul ball and it cracks one of the panels on the roof, that's not what our warranty is there for. But if the panel's defective, if it stops working the way it's supposed to, that's what our warranty is there for. So we would cover parts and labor for 30 years to replace that. And obviously we're going to get the value that we can from the manufacturer's warranties. Those vary pretty widely depending on the exact make and all that. Panel warranties are typically 25 to 30 years, and they degrade over time. Panels slowly break down like anything else that sits out in the sun. So at the end of 25 or 30 years, often the guaranteed output from that panel is 85 to 90%, depending on the manufacturer. So if we were coming out to replace a panel, we'd have to test it. And we really only do that test when we kind of know there's a problem with it, whether it's broken, it's busted, it's got a hole in it. Okay, that's clearly a problem. Or we can see in the monitoring software, okay, this panel and is making a lot less power than its immediate neighbors. Clearly there's an issue with it. Let's pull it off the roof, run the test on it to see how much power it can put out. And then as needed, trigger the manufacturer's warranty. And that scenario, we'd be covering the labor under our warranty. Kind of a long-winded explanation. Be happy to clarify that further in a follow-up conversation too.
We did get a couple more questions in.
Awesome.
What do we expect the end of the tax credit to do to pricing? And I do suspect that might be a tax credit / tariff question. So maybe you can speak to at least the first half of 2026, sort of what our pricing might look like and if it's going to be impacted.
Yeah. I like this question. It feels like a lot of speculation right now, but I will share my thoughts on it. Months ago, when we started understanding that there would be more tariffs coming in that would affect solar equipment, Maine Solar made really large equipment purchases, as did every solar distributor in the country. So this is, supply chains are long when you're shipping things across the world and manufacturing things across the world. So, right, everybody kind of had their buffer stock. They were like, ooh, these tariffs are going to be a problem. It's going to be more expensive 2 months from now. I better buy as much as I can now. So that supply, right, us as Maine Solar, we're very small fish in that very large pond, but also really large national distributors did the same thing. So everybody really, really stocked up on equipment. From my perspective, we haven't seen a huge impact on our pricing due to tariffs yet. We are definitely working through that stock that we were able to purchase, and we're hoping sometime early next year, there will be some equipment out there that it does make sense to purchase. With the tariffs coming in and the residential tax credit going away, earlier I mentioned lease companies and how they have to meet these new regulations that are coming down. From what I understand, a big part of that is safe harboring products. So they need to make a lot of equipment purchases before the end of the year to meet the new standards or to avoid the stricter part of the standards that start next year. So you have, where I'm going with this is you have a lot of pressure this year to buy. And we're hoping that the product we bought previously will kind of carry us through this huge price spike that is happening right now in the wider market, and hopefully get to the other side of it to when things cool off a little bit. Some pressures in the opposite direction. The US market looks kind of crazy if you're a manufacturer right now, and energy prices in Europe are higher, period. So the US doesn't see the best stock that's out there. That all goes to Europe. Like, we don't see the highest bin, highest quality equipment, the highest tier of product that's out there. Like, often on a spec sheet for solar panels, you'll see 3, 4, 5 different versions of the same model. And it's just, what quality of the silicon slices, kind of those squares in the panel, what quality was used for this specific panel. the highest tier equipment always goes overseas because they can get more for that equipment. It's worth more. Makes sense. That I think is going to continue probably toward the beginning of 2020. Like if I were in their shoes, I'd be like, no, I don't want to sell anything in the US. It's crazy. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I think there's going to be like a de-emphasis on the US. I think it's going to be kind of, at least for the short term. So I don't know, like, right. There's so many things going on. It's hard to say where pricing's going to go. I think it's hard. It's going to be hard to avoid more expensive equipment in the middle of 2026. Well, I think the beginning of 2026 looks good. We've got, from just a Maine Solar perspective, we've got a lot of stock still. We were, fortunate to be able to make large investments. So we're kind of carrying through this period here. And, hopefully we see something that makes sense for us to buy, and hopefully it's the right time. And if it's not, I think equipment will be more expensive. And that conversation is going to vary across different installers. I don't know what other companies are doing or how they're thinking about it. But it's really interesting. It's something that, my bosses think a lot about, and I hear a little bit about, but that's what I'm boss. I get to focus on other things. Cool. Yeah, good question. Sorry, I kind of rambled there, but it's interesting to think about.
Great. We do have a few other questions. I think some of these we may save for email responses. But the last one that I do want to make sure we get to is, if someone is ready to go, what should they do? What is the first step? How do they contact us? What's the sort of first step in the process?
Go to our website and contact us and set up a site survey. So that's kind of the first thing we do. The first step in the process is reaching out to us. You'll talk to Erica or Pauline on the phone or over email, and they'll get you set up on our system and get you scheduled for a proposal review call, whether that's in person or over a video call like this, as well as a drone site assessment. So we'll come out, fly a drone over your property to build a 3D model, really, really accurate 3D model of the house, and especially the tree line around it. So we've got really strong site data. So short answer to that question, you go to our website, or I think Liz, after the webinar ends, is there going to be like a redirect to our website?
Yes, we'll direct you to our residential solar page, which does have that form at the bottom. And Stefan, those site assessments, are they free and no obligation?
Oh my gosh, yes, they're free and no obligation. We're going to have a conversation about the quote. We always schedule like a call, either in person or over the video call, to review the data. We don't just kind of shoot quotes off without having a chance to talk to somebody and kind of understand what they're looking for, because basically every conversation I have with a homeowner or a business owner, my initial design isn't quite right. It's like, oh, we shouldn't put panels there. We should add panels. We should take away panels. Getting to the detail of it is super important. So we can get really good site detail. I also want to understand, right? All of our solar consultants want to understand what you're looking for, what your goals are, and how do we meet that?
Well, thank you so much, Stefan, and thank you so much to everyone who attended. If we did not get to your question, we will be following up via email. So please be on the lookout for that. And then in a few days, we will also send you the recording of this webinar. Again, we thank you so much. I think this was a great session, and we appreciate your time. Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.